Recorders. Today is a very special episode where we are interviewing Menno from Warcave Studios. The upcoming game is Black Legend. It looks to be like an amazing game. Graphics and detail are on point so far. Really excited for its release. And today on the panel with me is Dreadpool,
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Flamish,
Hello.
and Menno. What's going on, Menno?
Hello, good evening.
Did I say your name right?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. I know sometimes when I talk to Flemish, he tells me that I can't say his name. It's a running joke because I can't speak like Flemish or any dialect of Dutch. So I go, Gregory Goiverts. And he's like, no, that's wrong.
It's it's a good thing that we skipped the last name, I should say.
Yeah, it's a running joke here. Just the accent. But yeah. No, tell us a little bit about you.
Um,
By the way, Clownz, we're not live. I don't know.
No, we
how
are
long it
now.
take- sorry.
Yeah, I
Okay.
had to refresh.
Don't really talk much about myself. I guess within Warcave, I am currently the game's director and designer, as well as overall writer and helping with the QA a bit, as well as marketing. So a bunch of stuff going on because it's a small company,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's this is about my main tasks.
Okay, and how many people do work at Warcave?
Currently the team is 7.
Well,
Okay.
that is a I would say that's a small team, and from what I'm seeing on the demo already, it's amazing what you guys have accomplished.
Yeah, this month we celebrated our 1-year development anniversary, and yeah, as we're going through the feedback we're getting on the demo, it's kind of a mix. Some people really seem to enjoy it. Others have very high expectations for the game, and it's not too clear sometimes that we're a very small team.
I guess that's part of the double-edged sword, is where expectations are always high when you got good fans that like something but don't understand where you're going with it and they want to take it somewhere else.
It's a mixture of things. We think it's probably the emphasis on a more realistic art style this time. Last time with War Party, we went for more stylized graphics, and it just screamed indie. Whereas this time we've got some new artists who really wanted to go for the more realistic approach, and obviously that creates a more polished looking product, more professional looking, but that will also increase the expectations people have.
So you brought up War Party.
Mhm.
Now, when you guys did that and then you moved to this, how much of it did you learn from experience and bring it over into this game?
Quite a bit, and at the same time, we left some stuff behind. One of the bigger things we decided early on was we wanted to just focus on a solid single player experience this time. With War Party, the multiplayer easily took up 50% of the development, and we had to change a lot of things, make sure that people, for example, requested ranked matchmaking. We had to make sure that they got dedicated servers for that, so there couldn't be any cheating. People asked for a leaderboard, which we all implemented in the end, but we just noticed the time we spent on creating a solid multiplayer experience in the end it took away a lot of time from the single player. So this time we said, okay, let's just make a solid single player experience this time. Make sure that's all proper, that we can have an interesting story. Another big change was the engine. So War Party was made with Unity, and for this project, we've decided to switch to Unreal, mostly for the sake of our artists, because they felt more comfortable in Unreal. And for design, it's just nice to work with their blueprint system. So that's something else we picked up along the way. Yeah, those are some of the things that we carry on from War Party's legacy.
With you brought up Unreal. With that, are you going to be looking at upgrading the graphics when Unreal 5 comes out next year? Because I know it's a seamless transition, they say.
It's something we're gonna have to look at in the moment itself. It's not something we've decided on already.
The reason I ask is it was a predecessor to. I know it's on current gen systems. Would there be, with that, could there be any enhancements or versions for the Series S or X or even the PS5?
Again, can't really say much about it. We're all keeping our eyes on Unreal 5, and we're all individually excited for different things. Our programmers, our artists, they're all looking at the new features. But we're gonna have to look at the success of the base game first and see if it's worth it to upgrade it.
Okay. I guess eye on the prize versus eye in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So, Menno, when you guys come to think about a video game and the concept of the design, what made you guys think of Black Legend? Was there some type of maybe like story you wanted to tell, or myth, or something that inspired the game?
Yeah, the entire team is part of the whole creation process. It's not just a director and the producer sitting around and saying we're gonna make this and then taking it down. It's a big team meeting. And for the main inspiration, at some point it's mostly me and the main artist for both Dutchies, and we were discussing something. Most Belgians will probably know it as well. The Efteling, which is a Dutch theme park, which is incredibly popular over there.
Yeah.
And the whole theme of the theme park is fairy tales being changed to all these kinds of attractions and just telling the stories. And that had a very profound impact on us as kids. And we sort of combined that with The Witcher 3, which is a bit of a curveball I'm throwing here, I know. But we knew that the Witcher did something for Polish folklore that we wanted to do with the Dutch folklore and the Belgian one. A lot of their mythology and their culture was sort of presented through the Witcher series. And our thought process was, well, why can't we do that with Dutch culture? We have a bunch of interesting stories that people from all over the world have never heard of, and it would be a shame not to share them. And what better way to do it than through a video game? And that's kind of how Black Legend started. We just jumped into these archives of Belgian and Dutch and some German folklore and just started searching and digging for interesting stuff.
That is kind of interesting. I always like stuff like that because there's when it comes to folklore, there's always a lot of inspiration behind that, and every country, every culture has their own type of folklore, and you know, games is a great way to get that across. I think, as somebody who lives in America, I would know nothing about Dutch or European folklore, the way that that it was told or explained to everyone over there. So it's really fun to experience it kind of like that, like in a game. and it always makes me excited. It's one reason why I was excited about The Witcher. I'm excited about Assassin's Creed Valhalla for the same reasons, and I think that your game speaks to me just from what I've seen, because this is the kind of stuff that I'm really into. This is what I really love about culture.
Yeah, it's they always say try to make the games you yourself want to play. And if I look back at my own game history, I know all my Greek mythology and Norse mythology and some Egyptian mythology just by playing Age of Mythology and reading all the description texts of the units. A lot of history I know, not from books, but from Age of Empires, just playing that. And that's the kind of experience I wanted to do here, where I wanted people to go, how on earth did people come up with this stuff? Then I know I've done my job correctly because I've shown them something they don't know yet.
Yeah, so I was actually playing the game a little bit earlier today. That's what you're seeing on the show as well, like in the background playing. And it was very interesting how the combat system works in the game. And when I was going through the game, it has like that eerie vibe that you have like all the time going on, and all of a sudden you hear like a woman screaming in the background, like she's getting killed or something.
Yeah.
Was it a design choice to go like this very dark theme, or was it more to do with the folklore? How you wanted?
It's a bit of both. Our lead artist and I are both big Dark Souls fan, and that includes Bloodborne, Sekiro, those kinds of games. Me mostly for the gameplay, him mostly for the atmosphere, and that was definitely a big inspiration for us to go that more dark way. And it just fits incredibly nicely with the dark themes of a lot of folklore. We're talking, yeah, big scary monsters. What better setting than a dark city completely covered in fog with cultists dragging people out of their homes that you can hear in the distance. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like, I don't know much of the folklore here in Belgium, so it's interesting for me as well. Like, to go to this game and probably have some things like come up from my own country and of course the Netherlands, because I don't know that about that folklore. Um, um, Yeah. Can someone take over? Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh,
Um, so,
okay.
oh, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Dred. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say because you were talking about the folklore, and where Clowns and I are, we're close to Disney, where he took it and made it magical, and it's funny how you can change history when it comes to folklore. That you come to find out when you start reading some of these books of the fairy tales, and they're nothing like they are Disney wise. Um, how much of that? I don't know if I missed it, but how much of that has been changed in your rendition?
The problem with folklore, just to begin with, is every region usually has its own interpretation of it. And yeah, during the entire development and just looking for inspiration, you go into multiple sources, and sometimes you find the same monster under a different name. Sometimes you find the same phenomenon being described with widely different topics. We're currently running a restream on our Steam page about the White Wives, which is Dutch folklore. For example, they said in one story they're these departed spirits of wives who had unfaithful husbands. In another, they're describing the exact same creature, but in that case, they're herbalists that have moved on and are trying to help people. And it's just a completely opposite thing where they go out of their way to help travelers as opposed to brutally murdering them. So in that sense, we pick what's most interesting at the time. And kind of thinking like, what do we need for our game, which is quite nice to have that flexibility. Yet to go back to the Disney thing, his biggest, I guess, concern was making it friendly for a wide audience. In a sense, a lot of Disney movies have been adapted to be more child friendly, and we're not restricted by that. So we definitely wanted to stick to the most interesting story as closely as we could, and then adapt it to the video game a bit, but not too much, I would say.
Okay.
Now, when it's a small studio, like the amount of the size that you have, do you guys do your own voice acting, or do you still hire outside voice actors? How does that all work when it comes to the from design to concept in a small studio like yours?
During the prototyping stage, I mean, I just did a few voice lines just to get the atmosphere going, but in the end we did get professional voice actors because they're way more reliable. They have dedicated professional equipment to do everything, and overall they're trained actors. They can put some emotion in there. They can completely go up in this role, which is how we went through our list of entries of people who wanted to audition for the voice acting. We went for the people that didn't just read the lines but actually put some emotion in there, and that's one thing we outsourced. Sometimes if things get too crazy, we're looking at maybe some outsider artists that can jump in here and there, but most of the stuff we try to do as much in-house as possible, just because of the extra communication and control.
Now, speaking of that, I see that you do have some positions open. Is that to help finish off the game, or is it for the next game that you guys are working on? Is there a next game?
There will be a next game. It's a bit unclear what the plans are right now, because Black Legend is sort of our first bigger IP, and it's completely original. We're still waiting for how it will be received. If we notice that it's doing well and people want more, then we can always say, okay, let's maybe make an expansion DLC. If we notice that it's doing well enough, but we have this amazing idea and we want to go for that, then that will be the direction we're headed. As for the team expanding, that is just something the company wants to do, is to just keep on growing and take on bigger projects.
Okay. Can I? Or
Yeah, sure. Flamish, go ahead.
okay. So yeah, I was thinking about the company itself. Like I see it founded in 2017, right? Like how did it came together? Is like with friends, or is it more like another way?
That would be a question for Steven. He's
Oh.
he's a producer. He's the CEO.
Okay.
So, how did you come about then? If we could twist the question, because Flamish ended up asking one of my questions.
So the company began, as far as I'm aware, when I joined the team, there were 4 people working on War Party, and I applied for a programming job originally, at which point a few months later I got the mail back saying, because when I applied I said, look, I can program, I had a degree in programming, but I prefer design. That's my thing. I like to be a designer with some programming, being capable of doing some programming. And then a few months later I got a mail back that just said, hey, could you come over again, because we're actually in need of a designer right now. And from there, War Party was already a few quite a bit into development, so I helped finish off that project. And then for Black Legend, I was sort of assigned the role of director to because of how close design and art and programming, you're sort of this central position. Yeah, that's how I came to be at my current position in at Warcave.
Okay, thank you. And so it's always interesting how, people get their positions or their roles in their companies, because it's never a straight line in. There's always, I do this too, and somehow everything falls into place.
A team of this size, you kind of have to expect to wear multiple hats until the whole company has grown enough to a point where everything can just be divided appropriately. But until then, most of us know that this is the way forward.
Now, when you with this game and the design in mind, I know that you're still probably a little bit off from release or full release, but
Mhm.
any thoughts already of like a sequel or a spin-off?
I would be very excited for it, but that is unfortunately not up to me. As I said, Steven is our producer, and he said the same. Like this is all very exciting and new for us in the sense that it's our first bigger IP, and we're just want to release it first, make sure that it's the absolute best it can be, and then from there on we'll either move on to a new project or we'll expand further on Black Legend. It's too early to say at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Um.
oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Flamish.
No, Clownz.
As far as musical score or music in the game or sounds, have you thought is that like gonna be all in house or is any of it gonna be like outside studios helping with that?
So the entire soundtrack so far has been provided from an outside source. Unfortunately, it's he has a very difficult name for me to pronounce. Actually, gonna try to find that out. But yeah, we've outsourced the music to an actual composer because we don't have anyone in house with enough experience with audio to make it there. And when we got the first files back, we were incredibly pleased. And yeah.
Well, that's kind of awesome. It's just I don't know, when I look at stuff like this earlier in development, it's really cool to see the whole concept from initial stages to end stages, and I'm sure it's also very exciting for all of you at the studio as well. It's like you ever feel like wow, we got so far already? Like you ever have those moments where everybody's just like so happy that um things are working, or was like, yes, we got it this far so far. Any exciting moments like that in the studio?
Definitely, but usually after a prolonged period of stress where we try to meet deadlines. Like we're very happy that we got the demo out, but the weeks leading up to that are usually just us being perfectionists, going through everything, testing, and trying to make sure that it's the best experience possible. And then when it's finally out there, there's that breath of relief, like, okay, we did it. Yeah, it's a bit of a wave that goes up and down, but the highs are definitely higher than the lowest lows.
I mean, I want to say it shows. Your demo is really well done. I don't see like any bugs whatsoever in the time that I played it so far, which is almost an hour. And I was thinking like, because you're like 7 people now, right? That you said before. is there like any difficulties with working with such a small team at the moment, or
Well, as I described earlier, not a lot of people seem to be aware of our team size, and we get these big expectations, but we're trying to not let it get to us, in the sense that we're hoping that interviews like these, and as more outlets are reporting on the game, that they kind of ask a question like, "Hey, how big are you guys?" That we can show off the amount of quality that we've reached within a fairly short amount of time with only 7 people. It's just something we're proud of, and at the same time, having a smaller team does mean that these big ideas that we had at the start, eventually you're going to have to kill some of your darlings in any project, where you have this great idea and you want to add it and you wish you could, but there's just something about a small team size that just limits you from doing that. And the best thing that we can do in those cases is we always make sure that we save it to a list for future use or anything else. And just hope that we can at some point, either in a sequel or in a DLC, implement it that way. But until then, we were all very realistic about what we can and can't do.
okay? And do you also experience like crunch? I know it's a thing in the industry. We heard many things about it. Do you experience it yourself in the company?
Well, we differentiate between what is regular overtime that just gets compensated, and the horror stories we hear from crunch in the United States, for example, where you get called out of your bed at 3 a.m. and you're being told you have to work for free or you won't get a promotion. By the way, there's pizza. Those circumstances absolutely do not happen here. So we do occasionally do a bit of overtime, but it's nowhere near the atrocities. There's no other word for it. Sometimes
Yeah.
that goes on in the States, for example.
Yeah, I think when people hear crunch, they think of the worst case scenario, and you know, when you have heart in your game that you're building or a part of, most people are willing to do stuff like that, even if they aren't compensated, just because they are too locked into the project, as if it's because it is, when you're a smaller business or a studio, you're more in tune with it as it's part of you versus you're just a cog in the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So that, how is the current pandemic affecting you guys with all this? Because everybody's, you got different hurdles when it comes to the pandemic and social distancing and making sure you guys are safe. How is it affecting you and the game?
Well, so far it's been twice that I believe once was 1.5 months, I think. Second time was only 1 month, where teleworking became mandatory. So we all went to the office, we picked up our PCs, we took them home, and we just continued. And we're all, I think, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm very grateful that I'm in a position where I can just work from home and continue working on the game, making sure that it doesn't fall behind. Obviously, none of us planned this. Or could plan for this in terms of the game's scope, but so far, if we look at our schedules and what we've done to handle COVID, all I can say is we're pretty proud of being able to still reduce any holdups to a minimum. What we miss most is just the direct office communication. Where it's just easier to walk up to someone and give feedback on things rather than send a constant back and forth stream of pictures. But yeah, all in all, we're dealing with it as best we can and trying to minimize delays as much as possible.
Well, it seems like you guys have good communication, even with the distancing. So, but you're right. I do know in my field, walking up to somebody, showing them physically what happens or how it's happening is easier than just, trying to jot down some words, and hopefully the interpretation is read the same way you wrote it, and then with a still image, and it doesn't come across the same. So it seems like you guys are handling it very well.
Discord
And
has been a great boon during the lockdown periods. I've seen about two of our environment artists just chill in our voice channel on Discord, and screen sharing, just continuously showing each other their work and sometimes working together side by side.
I've heard that as a tool also for first time work at home employees to be on a conference call, even though you're not really on a conference call, just so you have another coworker with you, so you can just kind of converse back and forth because it's about work, and kind of feel like you're at work without actually being there. And then, obviously, like you said, with Discord, screen sharing, so you can actually see where the other person's at and kind of glance over and give them some information. So that's obviously, tools are the trade, right? You use what you have, and you make use of it the best you can.
There's some things that I wanted to say first. One I wanted to address. I know that Flamish and Dreadpool talked a little bit about crunch, but I want to say that Menno, I agree with you. I think that there's a big misconception when Americans talk about crunch and then look at overseas studios, and you see these American journalists always point, to overseas studios saying that crunch is terrible and this and that, but what they don't realize is that Europe in itself has probably stricter laws in favor of employees versus the United States. And I've worked at a company here in the United States where it's a big corporation, and we were forced to do overtime. And then they get around it by in America, they what they call, if they put us like on a salary, and then once we're on a salary, they can force us to basically work as long as they want us to work, if we want our job. So you're 100% correct in saying that it's worse in America. I think that journalists just use it as a clickbait thing and try to get everybody all hyped up, but I think that European studios in general are a lot better and treat their employees more fair than most American studios.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of a country-based thing, because not all of Europe is exempt from being prone to crunch, and it's certainly not just the game industry. But just being able to unionize, I don't know, Belgium alone has, I believe, 3 major public unions that you can just join at any point. And if there's some shenanigans going on at any job, you can just always call upon them to assist you in making sure that the law gets respected.
That's amazing. That's actually good to know because I'm sure there's a lot of people outside of Belgium have no idea that there's laws like that that exist to protect employees in general. So it's good to hear that. And the second thing I want to say is that I know with COVID going on, it's probably a lot harder to get work done, and because there's mandatory times where you probably can't have social contact. But when you guys are actually able to get in the studio, do you find that being a smaller team set, like 7 employees, do you find it easier to like go up to another person's computer and be like, "This is how you would do this," or "Here's how we would do this," or "Hey, I have an idea, let's fix this." Like, is it a lot easier, you think, in a smaller studio?
Definitely, when the new regulations went in, we changed our desks so that everybody is just by default as bigger distance from everyone. At lunchtime, the old tables have been. This is part of the entire building, not just our studio, but all the tables have been set apart to make sure social distancing is being respected. When you enter the building, there's disinfectant that's mandatory. Everyone received like tissues, a small bottle of disinfectant, and a mask. straight up from the building administration. Everything is being done to prevent an outbreak or just contamination in general, and we respect those rules. We keep our distance, even if we go to someone's PCs. We're not going to touch their keyboards all over and move their mouse or anything. We keep a safe distance and just look far beyond from over the shoulder while they show us what they're working on. So yeah, it's definitely different from before, but we feel like being a smaller studio and just having the space that we have right now, we can just follow the basic rules up very easily.
Yeah, and I would imagine that being in a smaller studio too, it's easier to get, help or help someone else because I picture, if I was to picture myself as a developer or someone in a studio, and let's say I was a developer like on the third floor of a big corporation, and I needed help from a visual artist that maybe was like on the second floor, I'd feel like it'd be such a pain to go back and forth, whereas a smaller studio is probably so much easier, just to explain and get up and give ideas.
Yep, definitely.
Now, can I ask how you guys came up with the design of the game? I mean, like you talked about before, with War Party, being an RTS, and Black Legend being like a single player RPG. I want to say strategy RPG, something like that, right?
Yep.
How did you come up from concept to sitting down and drawing out the lore and going through to where we're at now with the gameplay?
This is a bit of recollection for me. So the whole process of wanting to share Dutch and Belgian folklore with the rest of the world, we got around together like, okay, we need to also fit our own story into this. And yeah, I just wrote that down in a big fat lore Bible and kept communicating with the team. They all had access to the document. They would give feedback or other ideas that were just added until the point where we were like, okay, this is definitely what we want to do. And with these rules, everybody could start. So our artists, for example, at every point when they were making buildings or they were making characters, they could always refer to that lore Bible and said, like, okay, this character has those personality traits, or that's the backstory of this character. So how do I reflect that in the art? As for the gameplay design, which is my primary task, I would say I'm still a game designer at heart. The whole alchemy system was a toss-up of two major factors. The biggest one was our lead artists that look for the atmosphere and just the general art direction I want to take. I don't want magic in our game, so no firebolts, no ice lances, none of that stuff, no lightning, and that landed in my lap as okay, you have to create an interesting combat system without magic. How are you going to do this? And the answer came in a YouTube video that I was watching about plague doctors and how they theorized medicine back in their days, being these four bodily fluids that would go into imbalance and that would cause all kinds of sickness. And I just jumped down the Wikipedia hole, as I'd like to call it, where you click article after article about every subject you come across. And that led to the creation of the alchemy system, where it's not magic, it's medicine, just horribly interpreted, but really interesting for a game.
So that's pretty cool. I did not expect that answer. I mean, we all fall into that vortex, and it's cool to see when you design something specifically because of the research that you fell into and literally fell into it.
I can recommend it to anyone to just keep clicking those links on Wikipedia. You come across the most interesting things you'll ever discover.
Okay. I was thinking about the folklore. How did you search for all that different folklore? Because I think it's not the easiest to find all those stories.
Uh, it was definitely spread across multiple sources. So Wikipedia, being both fluent in English and in Dutch, you have this amazing power to switch between the two languages and get completely different information. And sometimes, because the folklore is from a specific region, the article in that region's language usually has more relevant info because it's contributed to more by people who know more about it. I think a lot of countries have this. It's these archives of stories just being filled in there to be preserved as part of that country's culture. So we've looked up for both Belgium and the Netherlands. We went into these archives and we just started reading and looking for interesting things, also more historically accurate events and figures. We wanted to include those as well. And all in all, we found some, yeah, mighty interesting stuff. I didn't know there were places in Belgium named after the Neckers from The Witcher. Neckers
Really?
Plus, by the way. It's named exactly after that folklore, which is both Polish and Belgian, but they have very different interpretations. But they're describing the same name and the same creatures. So yeah, all super fascinating and just a very big charm of this entire business and this industry is you learn so much about the world while you're working on a game.
Okay. And
Brian L mentions the Owl House.
The Owl House.
the Owl House.
I guess Brian L needs to better give us some
Read
more
on.
information, some more
Yeah.
input on that.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking, like, maybe it's a spoiler, I don't know, but do you have a favorite one?
Probably while looking for it, it was Old Red Eyes in this case. Because it was an absolutely brutal story that I've never even heard about. It involves a village being terrorized by a big black dog that would just, tear people to shreds. And then one day, a woman was attacked by him, but it was she managed to fend him off with a tea towel she was carrying and managed to escape. The next day in the village, when people were discussing it, she noticed a man who always smiled at her, and she noticed some threads between his teeth from the tea towel. And that's how they identified the monster, who promptly decided to run away. They shot him, decided to skin him and bury both him and his body and the skin separately. And Old Red Eyes became this big black smoke monster that is now looking for his own skin, that just walks around the village, blazing red eyes. And I was reading through it and I thought, why on earth have I never heard about this story? This is something absolutely horrendously dark and cruel, and I love it.
Yeah, I actually myself as well. Like, I don't hear a lot of folklore anymore. Probably because my parents didn't tell me or something, or I didn't look for it. So it's interesting to hear the folklore from over here, actually, where we're based. It's interesting, yeah. And do you have like a bad one as well that you don't like at all, or that you were like, what's this?
I came across a lot of them that weren't really memorable because of how simple they were. Like, there's this monster that goes out on the streets. It's mostly the stories primarily created to scare kids.
Mhm.
And it was always just like, oh, this monster pops up at precisely your bedtime on the streets, so don't go out there. yeah, it was those kinds of stories that did not have that medieval, I would always call it like peasant vibe to it, where they just come up with outrageous stuff to explain things to each other.
Okay. Clownz?
Now, did you guys from the studio, did you go around the areas where you heard about the folklore to see what it looks like today with if there's still any nostalgia from the time periods, like if the buildings still look the same or any of the lands still look the same?
So we didn't necessarily go for the places where these stories took place, but for the city's architecture and overall inspiration for things like characters and dresses. We did go to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and then some of our environment artists, they visited like some of the major cities in Belgium, like Ghent or Bruges or Leuven, just to get the old architecture and the old buildings, get some reference materials there. So that's something we did do.
Oh, that's really awesome. It's really cool when you take that time kind of like timepiece of that era and you put it into something that's like a living game, like you did with Black Legend. Are you allowed to say at this point in time how long of a playthrough, an average playthrough would be?
I've gotten this question a couple of times and I've tried to answer it, but it is incredibly difficult to do. And the reason for that is when you know where everything is in your game, you kind of play through it really quickly. Uh, so, especially if you're the designer and you know every ability, what it does, the most optimal way to play, you end up becoming a speedrunner indirectly. Uh, what I've answered in most cases is it took me a solid 10 hours to get through most of the main story. And
Okay.
then I would add a modest 3 hours for some of the side content, and that is with me knowing where everything is. That's with me being very test oriented. So whenever I'm testing out the game, I try to break it, of course, by doing specific things to make sure that everything is working. But I still have to reach that goal in a more natural way. So I would say that the average player will definitely get 15 hours out of the game to complete the story with just the main story. If they would actually go out of their way to get the most out of it, that is very difficult to say. We've already confirmed a new game plus mechanic, so
Oh,
you
nice.
so that's if you finish the story and you say like, okay, I want to go again, but I want to carry over all my old progress, then yeah, you have a second playthrough. Um, Certain things in the game can also change depending on the decisions you make here and there. So yeah, if you want to see what happens if I do this or if I make this kind of character, again, that can add different things. Of course, the achievement hunters that will be given some tasks to complete to get them all of them. So at a minimum, I would say definitely 15 hours.
So you said you did it in 10?
Yeah.
10 hours? All right, so all you speedrunners out there, the director can do it in 10. Let's see if you can beat that number.
They will probably find some
They
walk
will.
through buildings
They,
glitch and teleport into the final boss room.
Yeah.
without
That's awesome.
glitches, let's see if you can beat the 10 hours. See if we can get a 9-hour speedrunner.
Have you seen my gameplay? Do you think it's like worthy of like a speedrun?
Flamish, I've seen your gameplay and I see you like go back and forth. So speed running, I think you got a little bit of practice to get there.
It's also it definitely depends also on the difficulty, which is something I didn't really address in my whole explanation. But yeah, if you get fully healed after every battle on easy difficulty, it's very different from managing your party on normal or even hard, where you either have to heal by finding a quarter tree in the game, or you have to use healing abilities in combat or farm potions even to keep your party topped up and make sure they don't die.
Okay. Yeah, I played on easy, so I didn't even look at the option. I just went in like everything will be fine, I guess. Because I think that's mostly when they say like this is how the game is intended if you don't change anything. So that was why I just went go, and yeah, it seems that was on easy then. um like I think it's very interesting with like the movement in the game. You have like the spots, like how much you can move, and then the attacks. But what I think was a little bit special about the combat system in general is that like you can basically do one or two abilities, and on the side you can move. But then you have like these arrows with like different alchemy options, like you were saying. I don't know the exact names. Like, can you elaborate a little bit on that for me?
We took inspiration from multiple games, of course. At the same time, we also looked at some other games and said we want to differentiate from those. So, for example, one of the biggest inspirations I would say for our game was Final Fantasy Tactics, which is it's quite aged now, but definitely sort of the way we wanted to go with our class system and just giving these classes a distinct role rather than just one or two abilities that like a grenade and an overwatch or something like that. Dungeons and Dragons also played a big part in it. Mostly the freedom of movement that you have there, where you can move, act, move again, do your bonus action. As long as you have a resource left, you can always use it. Uh, that's definitely sort of the flow we wanted in combat. And then in the other case, we looked at XCOM, and something I did was just go to the reviews, go to the negative reviews, and just say, okay, what are the complaints about this game? And it was their big focus on RNG, and we just found it too simple. So we said, okay, let's try to cut out as much RNG in our game as possible, which you may have noticed.
I think
Big thing.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting thing. Like I expected this like a percentage based attack, like you're gonna miss or you're gonna hit, and that didn't happen at all. I think that's very refreshing actually to have that sort of combat going on. Makes it also a little bit more calculatable, like or you can calculate how the battle is going on, and you can see like, am I going to like kill him in time before he like kills my character, or before I need to heal stuff? So I think it's very well done. The combat system is, if you like RTS strategy games, actually, you're really gonna love this game, I feel.
Yeah, we because we have a big focus on melee, the whole cover system was also reworked, where we said, okay, let's just make it very easy. Either you can target this unit or you can't. It's not going to be this percentage chance based on cover. And while we did want some random element, which you may have noticed is the critical hit system, even that we tried to make as predictable as possible, where every time you don't get a crit, your adrenaline will go up to a point where you're guaranteed to crit, and you can plan around that a little bit. So I've said it on the stream already. One of the strategies is you use your bonus action first to get some adrenaline if you don't have any yet, and then you use your harder hitting abilities just in case you get a critical hit chance. It's a minor optimization, but it's still something you think about. Like, okay, if I first hit him with this quick punch and then I throw my dagger, that's two actions that will not be able to crit, and then I can invest that adrenaline into what my bigger hit.
Okay, any more tips you have so I can speedrun through the game?
Yeah, just yeah, keep switching classes. I would say learn as many abilities as possible. Stay versatile. Try to cover as many colors as possible on your team.
Mhm.
Those are all things that will help the journey.
Okay, and the last question before I get to the other panel members again, like also the weapon system. Like the weapon system is actually tied to your skills, which is also something that I like. What was the inspiration from that part of the game exactly?
So I mentioned Final Fantasy Tactics. There's actually 2 series of that. There was the PlayStation 1. Later, this was ported to the PSP under Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions. Abilities there, you just use the unit in combat and I would get like separate ability XP that you could spend. Later, when the Game Boy Advance was a thing, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and the subsequent sequel were released, and it's that system that inspired our game in terms of learning the abilities. So all classes had these weapons that you had to get and give to the unit. Then, as they entered combat and finished missions, they would learn those abilities. And then, once completely learned, you could unequip the weapon, equip a new weapon. It's also where the cross-class system kind of came into play. And we just found it really interesting because the dagger you find at the beginning of the game still has some value. It's not, oh, I found something better, now I will never need this dagger again. No, you need to learn the ability if you want a versatile character.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
is there any Easter eggs in the game that you can talk about?
Uh, some would argue that the whole reason to get into game development for many is to just get the excuse to put in Easter eggs. So I've definitely been guilty. I know our lead artist has been guilty of putting in stuff. But I'd say the biggest fun with Easter eggs is leaving it to people, is leaving them behind and not telling people where they are. So yeah, some of the quest names some people might recognize from certain anime series. At the end of the day, our team is 7 nerds who I encourage at every opportunity that I have to put in stuff they love or a nod to things they love. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in there, and I'm looking forward to people finding them and calling them out like, "Hey, I recognize that thing."
Nice. I'll be looking out for some stuff. I can't wait. I am truly excited for this game. I love the aesthetics of it. I like the visuals of it. I like the way that like even the detail on the cobblestone streets. Like I thought that was pretty cool. I'm really into that kind of like old school architecture and design, and I think you guys, even for a small studio, I think you nailed this really, really well. I am surprised, to be honest with you, that it's a 7-man or 7-person studio, because I would imagine like that some of these buildings and architectures might have taken a while to develop, and just the fact that you guys are so small and got this done already 1 year into development, I am mind blown by the dedication and the love and the passion that you have for this game.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of sort of more old school development, I would say, where your limitations have to become your strength. And everything we do, we just calculate it. Okay, how can we implement these buildings as efficiently as possible? How can we use these assets to their maximum? And that just forces you to be so creative. And this is the result of that. Before, it was game developers trying to fit the entire game on their cartridge. I'm sure many people know the stories of the first Pokemon games being an incredible feat of programming, just because of how creative the programmers were, reusing as much as possible. And that is definitely in this case where a limitation like I don't want magic in my game gives birth to our current combat system.
So speaking of, before we were just talking about, Easter eggs, are there anybody from the studio as one of these characters? Have you used somebody's face?
Ooh, good question.
Our lead artist did use some of his favorite actors, I believe, to model
Yes.
some of the character faces after. I believe he used Joaquin Phoenix at some point. I swear I saw it on his monitor. As for ourselves, some of the character names, the random characters that you start with in the game, may have familiar names if you went through the credits. Just because we could.
I would, that's for sure.
It's something we just decided upon. Like, hey, let's just give a nod to ourselves at some point. And I think if I can look at the, yeah, I can already see in the gameplay footage 2 names pop up of people who worked on the game.
Really?
Yeah, I just remember Lionhead Studios when they had the one guy that was a twin. So that's, it's always curious to see if anybody else is doing the same thing that we don't know of, and always, that was one of the questions I had written down. I was just waiting for a good time to ask that, because we were looking through the character creation and the NPCs, and just curious. It's nice to know that you guys do give your guys a little bit of that, a little extra credit, with the name or face.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's the point
um,
of development for us, where you just, even during development, you have to have a little bit of fun, and this is the way to do it, we believe.
I'm just throwing this out there because this would be kind of fun for everybody watching or any of our fans out there. If you ever need to create a villain in this game or like an end villain later on, you can name him Gregory Goivert, and then when the character goes to pronounce his name, you're like, I can't pronounce that.
The infamous
I'm
name.
gonna assume the 2 NPCs are basically the 2 of you.
Um, Damn, I lost my question. Damn it. Okay.
Oh,
What I want to say, this is just something about Belgium in general. Holland, also a little bit, but not so much. I think I don't know exactly, but like when you look at these buildings, right, from the 1600s, and Menno knows what I'm talking about, like 17, 1800. Here in Belgium, we have actually that architectural style still in our main city. So for everyone that loves this kind of stuff, you have to come to Belgium to actually see these kind of buildings and stuff. And I think it's really well done in the game as well, like how they look and stuff. Really well represented. A little bit of a piece like that. So yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it was just a no-brainer. Belgium is a very small country with a 1-hour train ride. You can easily reach every major city.
Yep.
It would seem like a waste not to use direct reference material when it's so readily available. So we just sent our artists on a trip with a camera, and yeah, this is the result.
Was also more for the other persons to know that they know a little bit more about Belgium. Of course, I mean, you have to represent your own country as well. So, yeah. Anyone else?
Have you guys thought about programs? Because I know from what I read, this game is coming to PCs and consoles. Have you guys thought about programs like PS Plus or Game Pass for this?
That's something I can't really answer. As
Okay.
in, it's usually the service itself that approaches you, or you have to approach them. But it's not just an instant like, "Hey, can you put our game on there?" As a small indie studio, your voice isn't that loud yet.
Okay.
Are you thinking about like our Is the studio thinking about maybe contacting them about maybe bringing it to consoles?
Well,
And
I'm sorry, Menno, go ahead.
yeah, I was trying to ask him in what sense. We have it planned for all the, what is it now, the current generation, so the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and then the upcoming generation as well. Most of our focus is to just have it available on those platforms as best we can, and of course the Switch. And finally, PC. We're going to see what platforms. Obviously, Steam is a big one. If we can get it to more, we're all about choice. That's just if you have a certain platform and we can offer an experience on that platform, where we figure why not do it. And we always try to contact as many people as possible regarding that. Like, hey, would you like to feature our game on your platform?
Have you had a chance to try your game like on any of the next gen dev kits like the Xbox Series S or X or the PS5?
They're not in yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, we're keeping a close eye on all the development news we get there, of course, and just making sure that as soon as we get it, our game is ready to be tested on those platforms.
Okay. I'm pretty excited to be honest with you because I know that next gen is almost around the corner, and I know at least with Xbox, it sounds like Microsoft is making it easy if it works on Xbox One that it should work on the Series S or X, just as easily. So I'm hoping from a dev standpoint that it works that way for you guys with your game because to be honest with you, I'm very excited to play this on multiple platforms. I would probably get this on the Switch, the Xbox One X, and PC as well, just so I can play it in multiple places like that.
Now, what's the highest resolution quality that you guys are aiming for with this?
So far, I believe the highest we've tested on is 1440p, and that already seems to run smoothly. Can't say too much about higher quality, like the full 4K stuff. That will still require a bit more testing. But so far, most of our builds are all running rather smooth. We're not noticing any hiccups or anything. So at a minimum, I can say we're trying to guarantee 1440p, 60 FPS, just baseline.
Oh, that's great. That's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah,
For the
that's
PC and the major consoles, the Switch obviously isn't quite as powerful, but even there, we're going to try to get it as smooth as possible.
Okay. And about the new bells and whistles from like the new consoles, the new tech that's coming out, like ray tracing and stuff. Are you gonna maybe use that in the future? Are you thinking about that?
Hard to say. Again, right now we're just looking at Black Legend, trying to get the most out of the current tools and plans by release, and after that, we're gonna have to see if we want to. If we've expanded enough for the next project, we can see what all kind of crazy techs we can try to use. But for the most part, we're just focusing on Black Legend right now.
Now, I must have missed it. Either that or I forgot. Now, you've been designing this or building the game for 2 years? Or 1 year?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. So, I mean, all in all, with what you guys are doing for 1 year, with 7 people, at the resolution you guys are going for, the frame rates per second, the history that you guys have gone back through and filtered out. I mean, it's an accomplishment for a feat of this size. It's. I mean, I gotta applaud you guys, and the games, still looks interesting to play. I'm watching this, and I'm still watching Flamish make the same mistakes over and over again, because obviously we're watching the playback again, but it's so intriguing that I watched the trailers, I watched the 2 videos you guys had. of the gameplay breakdown, and it was really cool to see all this, and knowing more information about it is definitely a good thing, because now you can actually appreciate the work and of everything you guys have done with, like I said, such a small team and such quality work. And the gameplay, like I said, just different and at the same time somewhat familiar. It's really cool to hear all this and see it in action.
Thank you for the kind words. That's all I can say. It's definitely been a passion project for every member of the team. We're all really excited to be working on something like this, and we all may have our individual reasons, be it the passion for the art and the architecture, or in my case, like you said, creating a gameplay system that feels both different yet familiar, which is what you need to go for with an indie game. Yeah, all of it. It's just passion.
Do you have a projected release date?
That is something I believe we said early 2021.
Okay.
That's not that far off.
I was hoping more of a definitive answer, but
Yeah,
we'll get what we can, right?
that's something you're gonna have to get used to when you're doing
Yeah.
interviews. Vague answers.
Nah,
Yeah.
that's quite all right. We know, but we got to try sometimes. You gotta, even though you know the answer, you got to ask, because people in the chat or people listening later on are like, "Why didn't you ask this? You should have asked this." So we got to throw out some of those questions, even though we already know the answer. It's just one of those things.
Is there anything that you want people to know about the game so far that maybe hasn't been asked, or that you think might come in the future that people might ask?
Trying to think here, because we've been talking for quite some time now. Let's see, what was. I think we've covered most of it. If you're interested in the game, all I can ask is wishlist us on Steam. It gives us feedback. It lets us know how many people are interested in the game, and it just serves as a really valuable metric for us to. Yeah,
I'm doing that right now.
Yeah,
to
I'll be
Yeah.
doing that
things in the
too.
future, if we notice that a lot of people are wishlisting it and we see the interest in the game grow, then the decision of like, should we make a sequel or should we plan a DLC, that just enters the whole the meeting space that we will have when discussing the next project. So
Do you also have a price in mind, or is that still discussable intern?
that is still being discussed.
Okay. Alright, is there any closing topics, guys?
VJ in the chat says visuals remind him of a foggy Shoreditch and foggy 1840s East London.
It's England. It's always foggy.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
he's a teacher.
No, yeah, I think we are I think we're at the end of the interview then, Clownz, right?
Well, I wanted to ask Dreadpool. Do you have any other questions you want to ask, Dreadpool?
Well, let's see. One of my favorite questions to ask is, when you need the next voiceover actor, can you look me up?
If you send a link to your voices.com page, we'll save it somewhere.
Okay, I'm working on that too. So, but no, I truly appreciate taking the time with us and discussing things. I actually learned a lot more than I thought I knew, because I guess once I found out, I was like, okay, now I really need to look into this, because I was already looking into it and I was interested, And I was, all right, we'll see. But it's really really cool to get to know more about all this, and see how much more in depth there is into not just creating the game, just the facts behind the game. Like I said before, it's a team of 7. You guys are wearing multiple hats, trying to coordinate within the pandemic, and trying to social distance at the same time, and remote, and at the same time, you're in the office and dealing with all this, and creating such a beautifully looking game with the detail, especially when you said, even with War Party, you went from one design and changed it to a different design when it came out to Black Legends. You didn't want to have that, what was it, cartoony feel to it. So you wanted to make sure that you stepped up your game. So it was really cool to like I said, talk with you and learn more about the game, and be more invested in it.
It's an opportunity for us as well. Like I said, we're all very passionate about it, and we want to share this with the world. And it's interviews like these and podcasts and people discussing the game that gets the message out there. So yeah, for us, it's also really really nice of you guys to invite us over to come talk here. And what else did I want to say? Yeah, at the end of the day, this is more personal, but a more transparent game industry, I believe, still makes for a better industry where you can get the stories behind the games that you're buying, that you're interested in. Uh, for me personally, that's always the more interesting part. And I think, yeah, a lot more people would benefit from just knowing how games are made and what goes into the creation of one.
I agree, and I think that, from my perspective, I think that there's a lot of more heart and soul when it comes to smaller studios and indie studios and what they put into their games. It's not, some big corporate manufacturer where they just have multiple and tens of hundreds of writers to come up with something. It's like a heart and soul project where the small studio, the people get together and they're like, all right, how are we going to do this? And they just go from design to concept to initial alphas and betas, and it's just the process to me is just so much more interesting because of all the love that goes into something like this. So thank you for making this awesome game, and I am really excited for its release.
Thank you guys for giving us another platform for exposure. That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
Anytime.
So, first of all, guys, if you know this game, you can actually download the demo on Steam at the moment because of the special stuff that's going on Steam. The exact words slip my mind at the moment. And no, for me as well, like I really want to thank you for coming on the show. It's really a pleasure to actually have a little bit more insight on one of these smaller studios, like indie studios. It's and indeed, like Clownz is saying, like the passion, you always see that more in those indie studios, and that's what I love about indie in general. So, really thank you.
My pleasure.
Um, and Menno, I did put all Warcave's links in the description of the video, but can you tell people that are listening where they can find you?
They can't. It's nice and simple.
Yeah, because the Menno I found on Twitter, I didn't think that was you.
Yeah, I noticed the at Menno. It's like I don't know what they found, but it's not me.
Oh
No,
no, I
there's no personal social media or anything for me.
So just Warcave on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah, if I can chill for something, it would probably be just our official pages. So we have the Warcave Facebook page, our Twitter, and our Instagram page. We just try to update every few days, providing all kinds of stuff when we're going live. If the store page has been updated, or just random development trivia, like I discussed in this talk. Sometimes we throw that up as well.
So yeah, worth following if you're interested in the game.
Awesome. Okay.
And Dreadpool, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter as Dreadpool, all caps, all letters. Actually, the O's are actually zeros, and you can find me on Wednesday nights with the Game and Beyond the Box crew. 8 p.m. Eastern. Friday mornings on breakfast. I'm sorry, I'm getting my stuff mixed up.
That's all right.
With what was it? Breakfast with Boom
Yep.
at 10 a.m. Eastern, and then my own thing on basically Spotify, Anchor, Apple Apple Podcasts. It's Breaking Bread with Dread. It's all under Dreadpool, so just look for that there. And as always, my DMs are open.
And Flamish, aka Gregory Goyverts, who taught me the one Flamish word of candy. What was it, like Spoondelhoot?
No, Snoophood.
Snoophoot. Okay, there we go. Snoophoot. That's the only word I learned. Where can people find you?
Okay, so first of all, you can find me on my Twitter account, Gregory Gooivaert. It's also in the description below. It's below my name in the video. Second, I have my own account, Flamish, of course, where I sometimes post a video about games, and then I have my Sunday show, the Flamish Experience, which I also do on my own channel as well. And the rest of the week, it's like reviews, reviews that are coming up, gameplay, live streams, and interviews like this. So, and that's on Four Guys with Quarters.
And you can all find me at Italian Clowns below with a Z. And Gregory Goyverts forgot to say Retro Renegades on Tuesday nights. But don't worry, Graphic God, I said it for him. And then you could find me on Mr. Boomstick and Friends Mondays nights, Game Beyond the Box 8 p.m. Wednesday nights. Sometimes Retro Renegades, and I feel like I'm missing some other stuff, but just look up Italian Clowns everywhere. And thank you so much, Menno, for coming out and talking with us. It's been a real pleasure with you, and just learning, a lot of this stuff that goes into it. And like I said, I think we're all looking forward to the release on this. And if Xbox or PlayStation's listening, I know you can't say anything, but I do hope that they do approach you for those awesome programs and give you guys some opportunity and exposure.
Thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely. And to everybody in the chat, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see ya.